Hi everyone, welcome to this launch of a stakeholder platform for decarbonization of transport. Just to give you a brief background, the stakeholder platform is part of the NDC-TIA initiative for Asia. It's a joint program that are GIZ, WRI, ICCT, IPF, Agora, Partnership on Sustainable Low Carbon Transports, LOCAT, and Renewable Energy Policy Network for 21st Century 1021. We are discussing about the India component of the program, for which NITI Aayog is our partner in the project. And today, we are having this virtual workshop to launch this forum on decarbonization of transport for India. Let's get moving, and I will request Siddharth Sinha from NITI Aayog to deliver a welcome address. Over to you, Siddharth.
Thank you so much, Amit. Just informing if you can hear me.
Yes, Siddharth.
Great. Thanks, Amit. And it's lovely being here again after the first session, after the first close discussion that we had, early in the morning, which went right in before this. So it was a great session, and as I said, that clean mobility or a transition towards clean mobility is one of the key priorities of the government right now. And therefore, this stakeholder forum on decarbonization of transport will, of course, complement the efforts of the government in a big way. And I think the biggest testimony to this, perhaps, in the context of this call itself, would have been the open house discussions that we had in the last call. There were so many views that emerged. People had, in-depth discussions. People were, adding to each other's views or, debating their views and so on and so forth. And I think in the longer run, this is what we need, in the clean mobility ecosystem as well. And especially because today we have, three different challenges and not one. The first is, of course, the issue of increasing urbanization and increasing agglomeration. The second issue is now, you must have seen the report of the IPCC, which has actually been, called as a portrait for humanity, which talks about how global warming is constantly,
on the rise. Humanity is entirely to be blamed for the same. And third, of course, what has happened because of COVID in terms of the increase in, the private share of, private share vehicles, which is why decarbonization is of great significance. And the government is, of course, doing a lot of work starting from, the National Mission on Transformative Mobility, to FAME scheme, to the Green Hydrogen Mission, which was recently announced. So there have been a plethora of initiatives in government. But as I said earlier on today, one of the major problems is that we often work in silos. And that's not just the case within the government, but it's the case within the private sector as well. And people are working in silos, people are competing with each other, which is good. But when it's for a common cause, I think it's collaboration and convergence which could really, help this, moving forward. And I like to congratulate WRI for making the lead on, creating the stakeholder platform. And of course, as part of the NDC-TIA project, which we are all working on jointly from the 7 consortium members, GIZ, WRI, ICCT, SLOCAT, 1021, Agora, all of us are working together for the NDC-TIA project. So really looking forward to this launch, and we would all be media committed from its side that we would work with you very closely and with the private sector very closely to ensure that this forum, becomes a resounding success, and constructive deliverables which actually complement policy making really come out of this forum. And finally, I would like to say that the one piece of information that I thought that I should share is that Mr. Kant was really looking forward to be here in person for the launch of this discussion today, but he had the launch of the National Monetization Pipeline, which is being launched by the Finance Minister today, so unfortunately couldn't go there, but he was very keen to be here, which is why he's recorded a video message right before going. So I think during Mr. Khan's address, we can play out the video of him speaking. So with that, thank you once again, Amit, and look forward to the launch.
Thanks a lot, Siddharth. So as part of this initiative, the Forum for Decarbonization and Transport will do two things. One, I think we will discuss and deliberate the work that we've been doing as part of this project, which today we get in the first half of the day. And the second is also we want to hear from government agencies, private sector, civil society on what they are doing. So one, how can we complement them? What are the issues, challenges they are facing? How can we as a group try to come up with some kind of solution? And that's why today, after Mr. Khan's address, we will hear some voices from state government as well as city government as well as some private sector on some of the initiatives that they have. But before we move forward on that, I would request WRI-India CEO Dr. O.P. Agarwal to make a background presentation so that we can kickstart the discussion forward. O.P. sir, the mic is yours.
Thanks, Amit. I'll make a short presentation. Let me just try to share my screen. Where is the share screen? On Teams. Just give me 1 minute. I'll be there. So,
just for the information of the participants, we are also live streaming this session on Facebook. So if you want to convey this to your colleagues, if they want to watch it, they can also watch the session on Facebook live.
are you able to see the presentation? I think it's just uploading.
Yeah, we are not able to see, but probably, yeah, it's uploading, I guess.
Sorry for this few extra minutes on uploading.
Sure.
Okay, now I think this is.
Yes, it's perfect now.
Okay, so thanks very much, Amit, and sorry for this little technical glitch. But what I'm trying to do is make a short presentation on what decarbonizing transport really would mean. As I mentioned in the morning, a lot of work is already happening on the energy side, with a lot of effort going into installing a higher share of renewables. Transport sector has started getting some attention. Niti Aayog has actually been doing phenomenal work on electric mobility and some other sectors. But I thought I'll make a quick presentation on what decarbonizing transport really means from our perspective. This is a bit of an excerpt of a presentation that we made some time ago to the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, when they asked us to make a suggestion on what would a transport mission for climate change look like. So this is really picked up from there. These are some of the suggestions that we made during that presentation. So transport really is today accounts for about 15% of the global emissions of carbon dioxide. Globally, it's about 15%. This slide tells you roughly where the rest of it comes from. A large chunk of it comes from electricity, but transport is pretty much the second largest globally. In India, it's not that bad right now. In India, we are still at about 7.5%. So transport accounts for about 7.5%. Agriculture and electricity account for more. Manufacturing also accounts for more. But these emissions from the transport sector are slated to grow faster than the other sectors. And that is why a lot of attention to transport today can help put the transport sector on a low carbon growth path. So this is the opportunity to really put it on a low carbon growth path. Now, some studies done by the World Bank, there's a very interesting report that the World Bank came up with, which is called Making the Right Turn, which really looked at what you could do to decarbonize transport. And a very interesting slide that they came up with was really a scatter plot of GDP per capita versus per capita energy consumption from the road sector. And this is the kind of a scatter plot that they came up with. Now, the interesting thing in this scatter plot is countries have followed two different trajectories. One trajectory is like this. The other trajectory is something like this. And if you look at these two, you will find that the kind of trajectory that the US has followed is largely the kind of trajectory followed by oil-producing countries. That's why you have Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iran, all of them are above the upper arrow. Whereas countries like Europe have followed a lower carbon growth path. Now, India is somewhere at the bottom left cluster. And this is the time for us to decide which trajectory we want to take. So the reason I'm showing this is we are really at a point where we can make our choices now. And the kind of choices that we make now will really lock us into the right kind of a path. So this is the the basic point of we need to start early on putting transport at a low carbon growth path. Going forward, what we also find is 90% of India's transport emissions come from road vehicles. In the morning, Siddharth also mentioned this, but a very high share comes from the road transport sector. It comes from road vehicles. Rail and marine are much lower. So what is it that we need to do in the road sector? That's where primary attention needs to be paid. But while attention needs to be paid on the road sector, to my mind, a lot of actions will need to happen in other sectors. Because if we have to move out of rail and move out of road towards rail, it is the railways that have to do things to attract a lot of this freight that is moving on roads today. So essentially, a problem is 90% of the emissions are coming from the road sector. We'll go to some more details as we go along, but broadly, this is the position. Interestingly, emissions from urban transport are growing very rapidly. And again, a World Bank study said that 4 to 6% growth per year in some of the larger cities will happen in the urban transport sector. And the interesting thing, again, why this has been projected, you see the UN population projections for the urban sector. If you look at this and you see the kind of growth that we are seeing in some of the big cities in India, India is likely to have some of the biggest cities in the world in terms of population. And I'll draw your attention to Delhi. Today, Tokyo is the largest, but if you look at Tokyo, the urban population of Tokyo is sort of stabilizing, in fact, slightly declining. But if you look at Delhi, I say it's not growing, it's leaping. Bombay is also catching up. Most of the other cities in India are also growing rapidly. So India is seeing very rapid urban growth, and we will have some of the largest urban agglomerations in India. In fact, Delhi is projected to overtake Tokyo in about the next 10 years and become the world's largest urban agglomeration. So this is something that we need to keep in mind, that urban transport will become a high emitter unless right actions are taken now. Now, we've seen motor vehicle growth over the last 20, 30 years. And this is data that I have put together from 1981 to 2011, mainly because the last census that we have is of 2011. We had a population growth of 77%. But if you look at motor vehicles, it's been a 2,500% growth. So way beyond the kind of population growth has been our motor vehicle growth. It's really telling how people have taken on to motor vehicles in a very big way. So this is another cause of concern, another reason because of which emissions from the urban transport sector will go up significantly. What we've also found is per capita vehicle ownership is increasing in all cities. It's not just the Delhis and Mumbais and Bangalores and Hyderabad, but if you look at this, even smaller cities, we are seeing increasing per capita vehicle ownership. Part of the reason is people's incomes have gone up. It's a status symbol to own a motor vehicle. People are buying it. The other is quality of public transport is something that we really need to pay attention to. Unless the quality of public transport improves significantly, the choice of a personal motor vehicle will become the more attractive option. So this is something which is a problem that we need to keep in mind. And the net result of that motor vehicle ownership has been this picture. It's really telling what this picture is showing. I've often tried to ask people which city is this. People look at the signages on top and they are able to decipher the city. But if I had covered that, you would give all kinds of names, and the answer I would give is you are right, regardless of whatever name you give. That's the situation across the country. And another picture. We tried to get around this by building flyovers, but when we built flyovers, this is what we got. I mean, the basic message coming out of these, there are pictures that I can show you on how broader roads or wider roads have not helped, how building multi-level road has again not helped. The basic message coming out of this is creating more road capacity does not help get rid of this problem. The problems are more fundamental. The problems need a more comprehensive approach to dealing with them. But this is the situation. Now, this kind of congestion not only means that you are facing delays in travel, it also means that more fuel is getting consumed, more carbon dioxide is being emitted because vehicles are idling for long periods of their travel. So this again is not good from a climate perspective. Now, let's look at freight traffic. Now, freight traffic in India has been going up. What this bar shows you is that freight traffic has been going up year on year. Unfortunately, even while this has been happening, the share of rail has been coming down. Now, India had its first transport policy committee was set up in 1980. And that committee had recommended that the share of rail should be 80% of the total freight. That was the recommendation of the 1980 Transport Policy Committee. That was an outstanding report in many ways. But if you look at it, the situation is actually the reverse. So something has gone wrong, something that we need to correct. In fact, the information that we have or the data that we have is road freight is more expensive than rail freight. Yet people prefer road freight. Primarily, the reason is the convenience of door-to-door. So the convenience of your goods being picked up at one point and delivered at your destination, that is what is making road freight more attractive, even though it is costlier. So the policy answer to this is, what is it that we can do to integrate road and rail in such a way that the consumer sees rail also as a door-to-door facility? In the morning, we spoke about how India is perhaps the one country where transport is fragmented across 5 different ministries. So even if it is fragmented across 5 different ministries, what can we do to bring them together when it comes to providing a transportation service? And that really was the logic we used in making a recommendation to set up a mission, a transport mission for climate change. So this is, very revealing that despite being more expensive, road freight has been occupying almost 80% of the total freight traffic. Inland waterways. Inland waterways is another very interesting phenomena. A lot of potential of inland waterways. I mean, I can tell you this with first-hand knowledge as having been the Secretary for Transport in Assam, where a lot of my time I spent on looking at inland water transport potential in the state, on the Brahmaputra. And we found that there is huge potential. It's just some simple infrastructure that needs to be built there. Brahmaputra has a special challenge because the river is not just, vertical mobility of the river across seasons, but there's a lot of horizontal mobility of that river. That's a unique challenge. But other than that, riverways are a huge opportunity. I honestly feel that due attention to inland waterways has not been paid. Similarly, coastal shipping is yet another opportunity for us to look at to move a lot of the freight traffic really towards much more or much cleaner modes of transport. So that much for inland waterways. Again, a huge possibility in the country. Now, electric vehicles work has been going on. Niti Aayog is leading a very aggressive program on electric mobility. Every day I see more and more vehicles with the green number plate. To me, that is very heartening because it's really reflecting how electric vehicles are really picking up. So this is a very good sign. Our own analysis shows that we could effect almost a 55% reduction in CO2 emissions from the transport sector in the next 30 years if we have an EV sales mandate. And one of the recommendations that we have made is while we have been looking at financial incentives to make EVs more attractive, I think the time has come for sales mandates and regulatory measures to be put in place to scale up electric vehicles. So electric has a huge potential. For longer distances, there's a lot of talk about hydrogen. As soon as hydrogen becomes a possibility, we could be looking at long distance freight, shipping, and even air moving towards hydrogen. But that is still some time to come, but a lot of work really needs to happen there. Now, very interesting studies have shown what the future of mobility will look like. The future of mobility, as people say, is a combination or an integration of shared vehicles, electric vehicles, and connected systems. So the Olas and the Ubers of the day, moving electric, systems being connected to each other, public transport systems being integrated, again, something that WRI does a lot of work in improving last mile connectivity to metro rail systems, really bringing about connected systems. So this is really the future of mobility. I think the time has come when the younger generation is not very attracted to having a personal motor vehicle like my generation was. They are a lot more sensible. For them, the ownership of a personal vehicle is not so attractive. They're very happy taking shared shared vehicles, and that is a very positive sign for the years to come. This is something that we really need to leverage in how we look at urban transport systems. So this is really the future of mobility, and something called mobility as a service is a rapidly emerging concept. What happens in this is, it's not just the Ola or a Uber running their own platforms, but it's a common platform through which you can book a trip using multiple modes. It's a single app through which you can book a trip using multiple modes. It's mobility as a service. Some countries in Europe have picked this up in a big way. This is something that we really need to sort of bring in a very strong way in India. This can very significantly obviate the need for people to own a personal motor vehicle. In fact, Helsinki has said that the need to own a personal motor vehicle will be obsolete by 2025 in their city. That's the kind of an ambitious plan we can think of or we need to think of. So mobility as a service, something that we want to think of. So what we argue is that there is a four-pronged strategy that we need to think of if we have to look at decarbonizing transport in a big way. What are these four-pronged strategies? One is looking at clean fuels. So whether it's electric vehicles, whether it's hydrogen vehicles, whether it's some other cleaner fuel that may come up in the years to come, one is clean fuels. Fortunately, on electric, as I said, very strong action has already started. This is one good measure that is happening. The second is a modal shift. When we look at modal shift, it is moving from personal vehicles to public transport when it comes to urban movements. Long distance movements is really about moving from road to rail, moving from short haul air traffic to faster trains. So essentially moving towards rail is a kind of modal shift that we want to look at intercity. Freight could be looking at moving to waterways, and in urban, it's a lot more also about walking and cycling becoming more attractive as part of this modal shift. So second strategy really is a modal shift. The third is integration. I think integration is extremely important. Interconnected modes make a full trip, a multimodal trip, more attractive than taking an auto rickshaw to a metro station, then waiting for a metro and looking for an auto rickshaw at the other end. That's not integrated transport. What we need by integrated transport is I get into a system at one end, do whatever transport. The system is taking care of all that. I'm getting information on when my next metro is due and where my next auto is waiting for me. That kind of integration between buses and rail, between paratransit and public transport, all of that, that is integrated transport systems. And finally, what we call optimization. Now, what we mean by optimization is that every empty seat in a moving vehicle is a wasted resource. The road space that we need to occupy has been occupied. The carbon emissions that will happen have happened. The energy consumption has happened, yet the seat has gone empty. So that is where shared vehicles help optimize movements. So any empty seat, if we can come up with this paradigm that every empty seat in a moving vehicle is a wasted resource, whatever we can do to optimize its use will be a good thing to do. So this is really the four-pronged strategy that we have been recommending. And unfortunately, this kind of a thing needs multi-stakeholder engagement. All this cannot happen when, unless these multiple stakeholders come together, unless these 5 ministries come together, unless different modes of transport within a city come together, unless different stakeholders in the operating segment come together. So it's really multi-stakeholder engagement is called for. And to my mind, frankly, this Forum for Decarbonizing Transport provides that opportunity. And that's the reason I would really like to congratulate the NITI Aayog, congratulate GIZ, congratulate all our partners, saying that this forum is really what will help create an opportunity for decarbonizing transport a lot more effectively. With this, let me end my presentation. Thank you very much. Back to you, Amit.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Agrawal, and for one fantastic background presentation highlighting the four-pronged strategy for decarbonization of transport. And second, also highlighting the fact that this cannot be done in isolation. It requires multiple agencies, both at national level, state level, city level, public sector, private sector, research, academia, as well as OEMs and financial institutes to come together. I think that's the whole intention of this Forum for Decarbonization of Transport. So thanks a lot for the presentation.
Amit, you'll have to tell me, how do I move this out?
I think you'll have to stop sharing the presentation.
I'm trying to look for that stop share.
Okay. And
has it gone? No, not yet.
Not yet. But apne yahan se kar lo.
Can it be done from there? Good. Good. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, officer. So with this, we now move forward and we will hear the video address of Mr. Amitabh Khan.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm extremely happy to be here with you at the launch of the Stakeholder Forum for Decarbonizing Transport, which is being launched as part of the NDC Transport Initiative Asia project. I must especially commend WRI, which is one of the consortium partners in the project, for their path-breaking role in envisioning and launching this forum, which aims to bring together all stakeholders involved in the clean mobility ecosystem in India. This really is the need of the hour today. The transport network plays a very key role in the economic development of a country by providing connectivity. This connectivity is what facilitates the movement of goods and people and keeps industries and cities running. The need for connectivity assumes prominence at a time when there is rapid urbanization taking place. As per estimates, India will double its urban population by 2050. This massive increase in urban population would put a huge stress on urban infrastructure, including on our transport. There will be a much greater demand for transport within and between cities. We also have to factor in the COVID-19 pandemic, which has presumably resulted in the increase in the uptake of personal modes of transportation due to fears arising out of the pandemic. This has hit the public transportation system particularly hard. Only a few days ago, the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's first major scientific assessment since 2014 was released. It shows unequivocally that global warming is unfolding more quickly than feared, and that humanity is almost entirely to blame. This assessment was declared as code red for humanity. Growing population, environmental pollution, and emissions, and the shift towards private vehicles due to the pandemic. These are all challenges. However, these are also major opportunities for us to fill the void with mobility which is shared, connected, clean, connected, convenient, shared, and cutting. As you all know, the transport sector is one of the major greenhouse gas emitting sectors in the country. Emissions arising from the sector have more than tripled since 1990. Almost 12 to 13% of emissions are from the transport sector, of which roads account for 90%. Roads also happen to carry almost 70 to 80% of freight and passenger transport. Hence, reducing emissions here is important. Almost all of those present here today come from the mobility ecosystem or from doing work in the mobility ecosystem. Private sector companies, startups, multilateral banks, and international development agencies, state and central transport ministries, and therefore, you are all already well versed with the initiatives which have already been taken by the government here, or which are at the pipe. The FAME scheme, which was also recently revised to increase subsidy and further bring down the differentiation between ICE vehicles and EVs, is pushing clean mobility in a very big way. Under phase 1 and phase 2 of the scheme, about 3.71 lakh EVs were supported through financial incentives. Indian rupee 1,000 crore allocated for development of charging infrastructure in the country. 2,636 EV charging stations in 62 cities have been sanctioned, and 1,544 such sanctions have been sanctioned on highways under phase 2. Several states have announced targets for EV deployment, including special EV tariff incentivize EV charging. Then we have regional connectivity projects such as the Delhi Meerut RRTS and Kerala Silver Line project, which will take billions of vehicles off road. We may see our first e-highway by 2022, whereas initiatives such as the National Common Mobility Card are increasingly making public transport more accessible to the citizens. Indian Railways will become carbon neutral in the next 9 years, whereas over 700 kilometers of metro rail projects are in the pipe. We now have a PLI scheme for the manufacturing of advanced cell chemistry, batteries, and all of these measures combined will push clean mobility big way and pave way for accelerated transport, decarbonization. There is an increased awareness of the need for clean mobility among the citizens of India and a wider acceptance of electric vehicles. The demand for e-two-wheelers remained high despite the pandemic, and more EVs were sold in the first 7 months of this year as compared to the whole of last year. And this is despite the pandemic. Recently, one of the companies, Ola Electric, launched 2 variants of their first e-scooters, and bookings crossed 1 lakh in just the first 24 hours. Today, I'm extremely delighted that many key electric mobility stakeholders, central and state governments, financial institutions, businesses, OEMs, research and technical institutes, private bodies, civil society, they are all working and innovating to create a favorable EV ecosystem in our country. However, one challenge is that we must break the silos that we are working. We must all move forward together. The greatest strength in the clean mobility revolution in India must be drawn from the cooperation and collaboration between all stakeholders. This is most critical for our success, as it would lead to encouraging innovation, facilitating greater investment, and fostering adoption. Therefore, in my view, it is the stakeholder forum on transport decarbonization, which is being launched today as part of the NDC transport initiative in Asia, is a defining milestone for the electric mobility ecosystem in the country. It will bring together CEOs, researchers, academicians, multilateral agencies, financial institutions, as well as the central and state government, all together on one platform. This will help in the development of innovative business models, resulting in targeted results and holistic growth in the electric mobility space. It will provide a platform to initiate dialogue exchange between industry representatives, business partners, scientific institutions, and experts from various businesses that are involved in different aspects of electric mobility. I'm very happy to learn that in the 4 years of the NDC-TIA project, the forum members will be participating in wide range of activities such as knowledge exchange, workshops, webinars, and peer-to-peer learning programs to jointly discuss and agree on ways forward to decarbonize the transport sector. I thank you all once again for coming together as part of the National Stakeholder Forum. I hope that through effective collaboration, cooperation, and convergence, we will all work together to usher clean mobility in India. At NITI Aayog, which is the nodal agency for the NDC-TIA project, we look forward to working closely with this forum. I now declare this forum officially launched. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks a lot. Great thanks to Mr. Amitabh Khan for such a wonderful and inspiring speech. As Mr. Khan said, that this is the official launch of the ceremony. We would now kind of unveil the actual launch of the forum. And so just bear with us that today, as part of this NDC-TIA project, we are launching the Forum for Decarbonization of Transport. And as you can see, this forum will bring in multiple partners together to act on decarbonizing transport. So again, apologies for the technological glitch that happened, but this is actually a starting of the conversation. And again, on behalf of all the NDC-TIA partners, we would really like to thank NITI Aayog and Mr. Amitabh Khan for such an inspiring speech on the need and of decarbonization of transport, as well as why we need to bring in multiple stakeholders together. And especially when we talk about stakeholders, it also includes a huge amount of representation from private sector as well. So again, thanks a lot to Niti and Mr. Khan. We would now hear some interesting work that is happening at multiple levels. And let me first invite Mr. K.R. Jyotilal. Mr. Jyotilal is the Principal Secretary at Government of Kerala. Jyotilal sir, over to you. Jyotilal sir, can you hear us? You have to just give us a minute. Please go ahead, sir. Sir, you need to unmute. Sir, we can't hear you. Sir, if you could see on top right, there will be a unmute button next to the red screen. Yeah, just on the right, top right hand side on the Teams. No, sir, we can't hear. Yes, now we can hear you. No, again you have been muted, sir. You were unmuted.
Yeah, sorry. I think there are some technical problem. I think now you are able to hear.
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Great.
So there is a presentation. I don't know whether I will be able to make it because the time is only 10 minutes. So I think, yeah, if time is there, probably I will share it. So first of all, thanks for giving an opportunity. In fact, after OPSR's presentation, which is
no, he is at home.
Yeah, I'm at home, so yeah. After OPSR's address, which covers, I think, most of the points, I think I will just start.
Sir, have you been?
Yeah. Are you able to hear now? Hello?
We can hear you, sir.
We are able to hear you, sir. We are able to hear you.
Yeah. So in fact, the OPSR's recommendations of one is decarbonizing, as well as second is how to have an integrated, I think, 4-prong strategy. I think that is what is required, need of the hour. Probably if you just look back, see, NGT first banned all the vehicles which are more than 10 years. That is the time at which we all thought of going for alternate modes of alternate fuels. We started with CNG, then we came to LNG, then we came to electrified spectrum, which starts with the hybrid and battery electric vehicles, and then to the FCEV. Now we have reached a stage where, see, up to 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, and maybe up to cars, electric is the best. Probably the cost economics wise also it is much better. Then coming to the trucks and other, maybe the buses and train and aviation sector, probably fuel cell, as Sarah suggested, is best. Actually, we brought a very aggressive policy by which we treated all the hybrid, starting with maybe all the electrified spectrum, starting with hybrid at par. That means we made the tax at 2.5% for hybrid battery plus fuel cell vehicle. And the government brought, the transformations happens, when one by force and second by source. So you need both the things. So that is where the government has got a major, or regulator has got a major role to play. In fact, the government of Kerala at least has brought up EV policy, and then we said the government will be hiring only electric vehicles henceforth. So all departments are asked to go only for electric vehicle they can hire. Then charging center, common infrastructure, we need to set it up. So more than 140 locations, charging centers are being set up. Some have been commissioned. 31 by the Indian Oil Corporation in their petrol bunks. In my request is that all the petrol bunks, oil marketing companies should be asked to set up at least one charging point in each of the petrol bunks. Then I think the penetration common infrastructure will be ready much faster. Then now itself around 4,550 vehicles have been registered in Kerala alone. Now the growth rate is very good, as I think Amitabh Khan sir also mentioned. Then building rules amendment has been brought about by which charging center, setting up of charging infrastructure is a must. That in all the flats and where the square feet is more than a particular limit. Then we have banned the electric, the diesel autos. They need to be converted either into CNG, LNG or electric. So then only more than 10 years old autos had to be replaced with either of these vehicles. Then in fact, one of the things which I think Sarah mentioned is the use of water transport, but that's the cheapest means of transport in the olden times. In fact, maybe British rule time, but we have gone down because actually the water bodies were never taken care of. The dredging or the maintenance of the water bodies were never done. So now with the national waterway development, we can, from one end of Kerala to the other, we are able to take the water transport route, which is the cheapest means for transporting the goods. Now we started the first solar boat in the entire country. It was launched around almost 5 years back by the Honorable Union Minister Piyush Goyal ji and our Honorable CM. So now we have gone ahead with the water metro with where we use the LTO battery. Probably by this month, then we are supposed to launch India's first water metro, which looks like a metro, 100 passenger capacity passenger boats with air conditioned, which looks like a metro train. And everything in the IFC, ticketing, every solution is adopted. The systems are adopted from the metro. So That is, then we have got a KWML, Water Metro Limited, which is a company which SPV has been formed, which will take care of probably future requirement of running water metro across the state. So this is another major important. And second point, which Sarda was mentioned, was the need to integrate. See, there are multiple agencies, multiple stakeholders. Fortunately, in the state, right from all modes of mobility is taken care of by one department, and probably the secretary is also one single person. So integration is automatic, whether it is aviation, railway, road, water transport, rail, everything comes under one ministry. That's a good thing. So I think we need to have that integration. And second is, apart from the physical integration, digital world is one area where integration is much more easier, because digital it's only 0 and 1. Maybe in the other world there are so many numbers or so many alphabets. So integration becomes much easier in a digital world. That's where we have common open mobility networks have been launched last month. Kochi Open Mobility Network, probably first of its kind in the world, where all modes of transport can be integrated. You can, as Sarda mentioned, point A to point B, irrespective of the mode of transport, you can have a single ticket and the seamless integration between, because that the protocol allows the integration between various. You may use any app, but you can still be connected. So the advantage is that seamless integration becomes happen, and then we have got a Metropolitan Transport Authority in place, probably one of the first cities in India to have a legislation to bring in the Metropolitan Transport Authority in the lines of TfL or the Singapore LTA. Now we are talking about vertical movement. Also VTOL and the electric planes are that we are going to try it soon. There is a startup which is registered in Kerala, which has already developed the prototype, by which first we can start with the cargo movement and electric plane. Later on we can think of introducing the fuel cell also into that. The water metro is also planning in next stage with a fuel cell boat, so that range is not an issue. Then, in fact, the recent national hydrogen mission, which has been announced by the Honorable Prime Minister, I think that has got good scope, because we already done a study. Probably time is not adequate. We already prepared a roadmap for how to make Kerala into a hydrogen economy, probably first hydrogen economy in the country, and with so much of coastline, so much of potential for the solar and the wind. And probably Kochi has shown the world that you can have an airport which is run fully on solar, and still there is excess power, and we give charging centers. 76 charging centers have been set up in the airport, which is giving free charge to all the auto rickshaws and taxis which are coming to Kochi airport. So whether it is diesel price is there or Suez Canal is blocked, nothing is going to happen, because we have got, as far as sun is giving adequate energy, we are safe, and we are able to give them free electricity for all the public transport vehicles in Cochin International Airport. The excess power which we are now planning was to convert into hydrogen, so that we have got enough water resources which can be converted into energy or the financial resources, and we can run hydrogen buses connecting the airport and metro. So the feeder bus to the Kochi International Airport and Kochi Metro connectivity will be either water metro boats, which will start from the Sial airport. Another option is you can take hydrogen buses which will connect to the nearest metro station. So there are companies which have come forward. Then second point, which one more point which I think the WRI, the OP Agrawal sir was mentioned, is we need to model shift from the road to the rail. Probably the rail, it has to be 80% has to be rail. So now probably we never developed the last mile, or how do we integrate the road transport into the rail. That is where the Silver Line project, which Amitabh Khan sir has been mentioning, that that plays a big role. Where you can take the train, or you can take your own car, or your RoRo service. You can take the truck inside the train. And what we have planned is $10 billion investment. The project will take care of transporting the cars between the districts as well as the trucks between the districts, so that inter-district movement of whether passenger vehicles or the cargo movement can be on the rail. So that is going to be a major breakthrough as far as the model shift from the road to the rail is concerned. Then Kerala is one state which has got almost more than 1.2 crore vehicle for 3 crore people. That means every house has got minimum one vehicle. So that is where the model shift will have a major impact. Then pilot projects we have now started. So when you talk about the green hydrogen economy, so you need to connect, we identified corridors from Trivandrum to Kochi as a first model corridor where we'll put the hydrogen fuel cell buses, and so that the common infrastructure for the fueling or hydrogen fueling stations can be set up. Already the DPR is ready, so we are going ahead with that. Then another important aspect is you need to develop indigenize the fuel cell technology. I think KPIT and Cochin Shipyard, all of them are working on that. Then electrolyzer cost need to be brought down. I think that is another area which we are working on it. The power cost need to be, so the transmission cost of power, so that you generate power in Rajasthan or in the desert, you should be able to take it out to any place, and you should be able to generate green hydrogen from the, maybe using the solar power or the wind power. Then offshore wind farms is another big opportunity with the 500-kilometer coastline. Companies have come forward to generate green hydrogen as well as ammonia for shipping or methanol. One more research which is going on is the IIT Madras and Ashok Leyland is working on whether we can have methanol-based fuel cell engines or we can have M100 engines. I think we are looking at this. Then hydrogen ports as a last mile connectivity. The Heathrow Airport, they have been operating the electric ports. So for the cities as an alternate mode of transport, instead of going a huge investment in metros, we up to 50,000 PSPDT, you need only a PRT. So we are exploring that potential in some cities which are tier 2 cities. Hydrogen trains, as I mentioned, is another great opportunity. Probably the requirement is that you need a minimum volume for any big companies to come and invest. So I think at present we are planning something around at least 50 coaches 50 engines at least should be should be on hydrogen, so that for any big companies to or Alstom type of companies to come and invest. I think this is another area which we need to focus at national level. Then biomass also can be converted into energy which can be used for the public transport, so that ultra low emission target can be achieved. Then the last but not the least is that the cost of capital. As I said, the power cost need to be brought down. That is where the transmission cost. Government of India is also planning, I think, to reduce the transmission cost through the grid, so that you can generate green hydrogen across anywhere in the country. And cost of capital needs to be brought down from 10 to at least 6%, so that it becomes viable. These are all long-term investment which needs to be funded. But the project or what is either alternate investment funds or the DFIs proposed by Government of India can be used for this. This in nutshell is some of the suggestions I have got. Thank you for giving an opportunity to share.
Thanks a lot, Jyotilal sir, for this wonderful initiative that Kerala is taking, and we look forward to many more such initiatives. And I think at the Urban Mobility India conference, we will also hear more about your efforts. So first of all, thanks a lot for taking your time and speaking to us. We would now move the conversation forward. I would now request Mr. Surendra Kumar Bagade to deliver his talk. Mr. Bagade is Additional Secretary at the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Over to you, Bagade sir.
Can you hear me, Amit, now?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. O.P. Agarwal sir and other participants and dignitaries, my friend Jyotilal, Amit Bhatt, and others from WRI. I'm very happy to participate in this wonderful initiative of decarbonization of public transport. Ministry is always eager to initiate and take measures that will lead to low carbon path for our public transportation. I must also appreciate that this initiative is well timed out when a lot of cities are growing and there is a need for growth in public transport. But the path they follow and what they follow is very important. The right decisions are very crucial for achieving low carbon emission standards as well as decarbonizing our public transportation. Ministry, as you know, has taken several initiatives, and we have our national urban initiatives which impact all modes of transport, and ministry promotes with cities different modes of transport, including metros. We have bus transport which we promote. Then also non-motorized transport, including cycling as well as walking. So these are broadly initiatives which ministry has been taking. And on metro side, as you know, that presently we are operating around 725 kilometers of metro in 18 cities, and about 100 more, 1,000 more kilometers of metro is under construction in 27 cities. So metro projects, when they become operational, you must have seen in Delhi, such an extensive metro network has benefited a lot in terms of able to move people in large number, and that we see as one of the bigger initiative for decarbonization of our public transport. Now in metro, as we are moving forward, we also want to bring not only we also want to introduce options which are suitable for smaller cities in terms of neo metro and metro light, but at the same time we also want to achieve what we call green metro. That's the idea where we can reduce our carbon footprint even for operating metros. And some cities like Delhi DMRC, they have adopted this method of putting solar panels on their station rooftop and other places, so that their power can be sourced from that source also, as well as the power purchase by some metros is also from the green source. So that will not only make a metro a source for and vehicle for decarbonization of public transport also, but also making it a green metro, which will be very beneficial for the city. So that way we can reduce the carbon footprint for the country and for the city. Now, as I told you, metro, along with metro, we also understand that we need to promote bus-based public transport, and even in the developed cities, bus-based public transport plays a very important role. So that role has been well appreciated by the ministry. In the past, ministry has launched various initiatives, including support for buying the buses and acquisition of buses by different cities. You may also be aware that Honorable Finance Minister has also announced launch of augmented city bus service with a bigger target for buses, as well as on a model which we think is sustainable, as well as which is oriented towards delivery of services. So the ministry is also working on a model of triple P for delivery of bus services, and while selecting the buses, we will certainly go for the latest standards in terms of BS6, as well as for preference for the fuel like CNG. And this model, we, along with metro and along with other modes of transport in other cities, will go a long way in shifting public from their personal vehicles to public transport vehicles. And I think that's the whole idea. Once we start here, we plan to induct many more buses in the cities. That will be one of the major initiatives for decarbonization of the public transport. Now, buses, many cities are operating, but at the same time, fuel efficiency, maintaining buses in a condition where the carbon emission is reduced. So I think that that initiative is also very important, and I think that requires continuous improvement in coordination with the city governments, because as the buses age, and if they are not maintained well, their pollution level might increase, and it does increase. So we need to also work with cities, and I think there are so many other experts on the panel that we need to build programs and prepare technical documentation which will make these cities run their services in the most fuel efficient and technically efficient manner, so that as the fleet ages, the pollution does not increase. So in addition to this bus-based public transport, we are working on a scheme, and that scheme, as I told you, is going to be on PPP model. We want city to work on it. We want city to work with us and deliver services over a longer period of time. So that's the goal behind our city bus service. In addition to city bus service, we also understand the role of non-motorized transport. And in non-motorized transport, two things we are doing. One is India Cycle for Change Challenge. So we have identified many cities. That challenge is a total of around 107 cities that had registered for this challenge, and some of the achievement under Cycle for Change challenge is like we could identify around 400 kilometers of main roads in these various cities, and more than 3,500 kilometers of neighborhood streets to make them cycle friendly. This has been done through extensive public consultation, as well as where more than 60,000 people responded, for the survey. So, Cycle for Change challenge has been a great help in motivating people for adopting cycling as a mode for transport and reduce the carbon footprint. So I think this is also going to be one of our initiatives when we plan for decarbonization of our public transport. I think everyone will agree that these mechanical movement methods are there, but nonetheless, I think our own movement, our walk, is the best way to bring about decarbonization of transport. And therefore, this Streets for People challenge also has been launched, wherein we want to inspire cities to improve walkability. So ultimately, if walkability improves, more and more people opt for walking on the streets, and that actually will reduce the need for public transport. And if this combined with the public transport like metro or bus, I think the switch from private vehicles to the public vehicles will be even faster if we can improve this walkability on our streets. And for this, we have identified around 42 cities where city-led design competition, and nearly 30 cities have identified winners and taken steps to, on the ground to plan for making city walkable, and they have taken various steps. All the cities have embraced a participatory planning process, and nearly 2,000 teams of designers, architects, and professionals around the country have registered to participate in competition. And we see over more than 100 open street events have been conducted by cities across the country to celebrate life on its streets. So I think these are 4 initiatives which Ministry is continuously taking and working with cities to improve upon them. Metro, bus system, augmenting bus system, or non-motorized transport, in which primarily is Cycle for Change challenge and our Streets for People challenge. So this is how broadly the ministry is working, and I think those initiatives we would see them implemented in significant number and extent to bring about whatever today's session intends to achieve in coming time, in coming months and coming years. Thank you very much, Amit. I'm here for any additional comment, but I think I should end. I've already taken 15 minutes of your time. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Bagre sir, for really highlighting an extensive array of effort taken by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. And we are so thrilled to hear about the new bus funding scheme. We can't wait to see more details. That's something which is very, very exciting for a lot of us who are working in this space of urban transport as well. So thanks a lot for your time and for an exhaustive presentation.
Thank you.
We would now move forward, and I would request Shri Ashish Kundra, IS. Mr. Kundra is the Commissioner of Transport for Delhi, and he will highlight some of the initiatives taken by the Department of Transport, Government of Delhi on decarbonizing transport. Over to you, Mr. Kundra.
Good evening, everyone. I will just touch upon the very broad policy level things that we are doing in Delhi. First of all, as most of you are aware, that Delhi was one of the pioneers in the EV policy space, and the policy has a mix of fiscal incentives for customers who buy electric vehicles, which in a way are top-up incentives over and above the FAME 2 subsidies administered by Government of India. Apart from that, we have also focused on ramping up the charging infrastructure in the city. So the municipal bodies have installed public charging infrastructure in the city, and they have some of them have issued regulatory guidelines for cooperative housing societies, for shopping malls and marketplaces on the kind of infrastructure which they are supposed to create. Apart from that, IGL has been persuaded to kind of set up battery swapping infrastructure in 50 locations. Recently, they have taken a decision on that, on the CNG pumps, and on in government buildings also we are in the process of setting up charging infrastructure. In fact, for government fleet, much like Kerala, we have also kind of decided to henceforth go in for a hiring of electric vehicle model, and our SLAs are now available on the GEM portal, so that the departments which want to hire vehicles can do so through the GEM portal. The focus for us in terms of expanding the footprint of electric vehicles is largely on buses, two-wheelers and autos. And in the space of buses, we've already placed an order of 300 buses, electric buses, in the first tranche, and another about 500 buses will be floating bids very soon. In autos, we have already kind of decided to, because there's a limitation of number of permits that can be issued for auto rickshaws in Delhi, which is 100,000. There was a headroom of about 4,500 permits available with us, which we have decided to give only to electric autos. And we are also mulling over a policy change that henceforth the auto rickshaws which are outliving their useful life will now have to migrate to electric. The permits, those permits will be utilized for electric autos. We are also engaged with the vehicle aggregators and companies which are engaged in the last mile delivery services. And through a consultative process, we are trying to see how we can incentivize them through a regulatory push to switch to electric two-wheelers, largely two-wheelers, but maybe in some instances four-wheelers, whichever is a win-win for both sides. So I think broadly that is about it from my side. And there's a lot of other stuff which is happening. I don't want to go into micro details, but I think at a very broad level, this is all from my side. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Kundra. And as you rightly said, Delhi probably the initial set of states come up with a very comprehensive electric mobility policy. I think now the the effort which has been made to operationalize this policy or to implement this policy is something which is very, very interesting for a lot of us to look at. So congratulations on that front, and it's really inspiring to see the story of Delhi unfolding on transport as well as on the electric mobility space. So thanks a lot once again for taking your time and speaking to us and sharing the efforts done by Delhi. Okay, so let's move a little forward, and I think we have heard some great work being done by national level, state level, as well as city level. But there is also a lot of work which is happening from the private sector side. And so we will be hearing some really kind of great efforts done by private sector on their initiative to decarbonize transport. And maybe we'll start with remarks from Manas Fuloria. Manas is the CEO of Nagaro. It's an IT company, and he's based out of Gurgaon. So Manas, over to you.
Thank you, Amit, and thanks to WRI for all the good work that's being done. I must say that WRI was instrumental in changing the way we look at transport in general in Gurgaon, especially. And especially this idea of decarbonization of transport is very timely. So I run a software company called Nagaro. It's listed in Germany, but it's basically grown out of India and has the most people in India. And I live in Gurgaon. I'm also part of NASSCOM's regional council for the North, and have been the chair of the council and represent the NASSCOM council on the GMDA, which is the Gurgaon Municipal Development Authority, as part of the Residents Advisory Committee of the GMDA. And I say all this as a precursor to my remarks because it sort of gives some context about the kinds of things we have been doing at Nagaro, at NASSCOM, and at Gurgaon. So just preliminarily, there are three reasons why we're interested in this topic of decarbonization of transport. One of them is investor focused, and this is very new, but ESG is a very big investor topic. And you have seen, for example, how ExxonMobil and other companies have had ESG activist investors take over the company, or at least get a lot of get into powerful positions on the boards of companies. I think in general, carbon neutrality, net zero, etc., is going to be top of mind for investors. So all companies, even IT companies, are now waking up to this idea that ESG is really important for investors. And in ESG, energy-related topics are very important. So decarbonization, carbon neutral working, net zero are all very, very important. So that's the investor view. Then the second view is the client view, right? So more and more companies are committing now to achieving carbon neutrality in the next 20, 30 years. So when a large company like Siemens announces it's going to do that, it's going to work backwards through its supply chain and make sure that every vendor to it is also getting on the same path. So, whether investors are important to you or not, your clients are definitely important to you, and carbon neutrality is again going to be a theme there. And in international trade, it's not just at the client level. It's also possible that as these wildfires, start decimating forests, etc., and this becomes a bigger and bigger topic, entire countries may decide to levy import taxes, for example, from countries that don't seem to be doing enough for carbon neutrality or reduced carbon, right? So I think that this whole topic is very important, even not just from the investor side, but also from the clients and international trade side. And the third side, which actually got me and Nagaro into this whole topic of urban transport in the first place, is air pollution. We talk of global warming, but in a month or two onwards, in the cities of India, you will have local choking, right? Which is very, very immediate, very short term. Not short term because it lasts for several months, but it's very immediate. And we have done surveys of our employees and our colleagues, and across our colleagues, across other companies like Make My Trip, and wherever we ran the survey, colleagues have said that they would take a pay cut if they could have winters that were clean, had clean air. So you have almost lost the ability to enjoy the nice winters of Delhi because of the air that is so bad for so many months. You can't walk, you can't cycle, old people have trouble getting out. So air pollution. So three big reasons why all of us as at Nagaro, but also as NASSCOM, take this whole topic of urban transport and decarbonizing urban transport as a very big priority. So now, what have we been doing? A few words on that. This began several years ago with something that we at NASSCOM in the north called active commuting, trying to create the mindset change first, the demand side change first. So trying to get people to walk, cycle, and take public transport. We got Euphoria, Palash Sen, the music group, to make a nice music video and song called Walk On walking, cycling, and public transport. Jab Zindagi Khuli hai to walk on, right? So leaving cars and walking and cycling, etc. So in terms of the receptivity to this change, it's been really quite advanced in Gurgaon. We don't have the facilities yet, but even there, we have worked with the GMDA on their mobility plan. And now we see for the first time that the mindset of the authorities is to prioritize the pedestrians, is to prioritize the public transport users, to prioritize the cyclists, and then think about two-wheelers and cars, etc. Right? So I think there is a big change, even in the GMDA's Common Mobility Plan, and we have been part of trying to influence that. Also, Rahagiri was something that came out of Gurgaon, where NASSCOM and Nagaro, and we all supported it in the early years, because once you get on the street and you start to experience the street, how it can be without smoke being belched in your face, without honking of car horns and so on, then you can start to imagine a different world, where you can walk to the bus stop, where you can, take a cycle somewhere. And a lot of the trips in Gurgaon are within a few kilometers of each other. So this is another thing that we were also involved in, Rahagiri, which is spread through the country and has its own, contribution to this idea of NMT in particular. We have decided to take certain model streets. So, our main office in Gurgaon is on a street which is called Anath Road, because it's really a poor road, very, very badly designed. And there was a plan to cut the 300 trees on the road to add more lanes. By the way, this is another thing that happens. It's not just that when you add more lanes, you get more traffic, but you also typically end up cutting trees to get more traffic. So that's also a hit to the carbon absorption, right? So we managed to convince the GMDA to not cut those 300 trees and to let us redo that street in a different way with more cycle tracks and walking areas, because a lot of people walk and cycle to the factories on the road. So that is coming up. That should be up sometime next year. But along with the GMDA, we're sort of providing capacity building services to the GMDA through Rahagiri Foundation and others. Like, it's a big ecosystem, trying to make sure that different parts of the city, one by one, are being made possible to sort of create model streets, demo versions of streets that can then be replicated throughout the city and hopefully elsewhere as well. We have, as part of this change, GMD has agreed to set up several 100 kilometers of cycle lanes. The first ones are starting to come up. And on the company side, as Nagaro, we have tried to promote cycling in the previous years. We have set up, cycle stations, bike sharing sort of paths where every, if you have to park your car, you have to go further in and park, but the cycle stand is right where you enter. And also we used to have rental bicycles available, for free, just by putting your name in there, you could just take a cycle. This has, of course, all been pushed back a bit by COVID, but as we come back after COVID, we have a chance to sort of build back better and sort of fix these things as well and improve them. On the electric vehicle side, we have been trying to move away from diesel and petrol and into CNG shuttles, etc. And when the first electric vehicles became available a few years ago, we created EV charging stations in the office, and we switched our cabs to more and more EV cabs. And this has been the general push that consistently trying to move towards lower carbon. And I think that as we come back as an industry, not just as Nagaro, but as an industry after COVID, we are, in the sustainability group in the NASSCOM Regional Council of the North, we are looking at how can we, as the software and IT and IT-enabled services industry, provide incentives to our employees that can help, overcome the initial adoption hurdle. So, we also would request the government to rethink its the tax breaks, etc., on vehicles and just make them maybe exclusively available to electric vehicles. But on our side, we're going to try to see what we can do to give incentives to people so that their next vehicle is an electric vehicle, and they find it convenient to charge it and and maintain it, and thus attract other people to the EV option. So that's a quick summary, Amit, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to share this. What we have been doing as Nagaro, as NASSCOM, and also as Gurgaon as a whole.
Thanks a lot, Manas, and so nice to hear some of the path-breaking work that is happening in Gurgaon, and a lot of it is being led by Nagaro. So thanks again for sharing this wonderful insight on what you, as well as NASSCOM, Renewable Council, is doing to scale up decarbonization of transport at your end. So we will now move to the next speaker, and we have with us Mr. Naveen Munjal. Mr. Munjal is the CEO of Hero Electric, and he will share some thoughts around what Hero Electric is doing to operationalize the decarbonization of transport. Over to you, Mr. Munjal.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you for having me here today. So it's an absolute pleasure being here, and I'm very glad to be speaking at this event, which is a very important and a pertinent one. So as Manas was already talking about, air pollution is a big factor when it comes down to India, and especially North India. We all know the statistics of the pollution levels that we have in North India come winters. This is to start with. I'm very, very thankful to the various to the center from government and various state governments for the huge push that they've been giving the electric mobility with the amendments in the FAME 2 policy, which is actually going to propel this industry forward. The transport sector in India, though a very important one, is also a highly polluting one. So we've got the third most greenhouse gases where contribution actually comes from the transport sector. Out of the carbon emissions in India, 13% are from the transport sector, and these have tripled since 1990. Now, India's transport CO2 emissions are likely to increase by almost 6% annually by 2030. That's a very, very huge number, and that clubbed with what is happening from a COVID perspective is not a great combination. But we are one of the few countries who are on track to achieve our nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. Already 21% of our pledge to reduce emissions intensity. So contribution to the Paris Agreement, we've already achieved about 21% of its pledge to reduce carbon emissions by 30 to 35% by 2030. In fact, it's just 2% short of the 2030 target of 40% of installed non-fossil fuel-based electric capacity. But we must continue to bolster our efforts in this direction, because the efforts are not just limited to reduction of oil import bills and ushering clean mobility, but also the emergence of newer business models, advanced research, greater employment or opportunities, and an overall multiplier effect on the economy. At Hero, we believe the only way to achieve the same is through transforming the largest chunk of fleets into EV. That will encourage drive transformation in India. The climate emergency is crystallizing the need of decarbonization in the transport sector. Some steps towards decarbonizing the transport sector will require, this sector actually is going to require a holistic and an integrated approach. Leveraging technologies where we can to create a cleaner road sector is essential, but it needs to be combined with other interventions that either reduce motorized travel demand or shift it more towards energy efficient modes. Decarbonization will also depend on controlling the motorization rate. This can be achieved by reducing the demand for private vehicles through enhancement in public transport, which to an extent is already covered under the FAME 2 policy, where there is a substantial amount of chunk of money which is kept aside for the electric buses. It would also require improvements in the financial positions of the state STUs for better quality and getting a quantity of buses on the road. We do need to get a large volume of vehicles on the road in terms of electric. A crucial aspect for India will be the effective implementation of the policies and schemes at all levels of government. I'm glad to see that we've got the center policy, which is already there, which is FAME 2, which has just been enhanced as of June of this year. Besides that, we've also got 16 other state policies which are promoting or pushing electric mobility through. Now, a large part of them are actually more towards demand creation, but nevertheless, there are numerous others which have demand, which are working towards, a large number of them are towards manufacturing creation, but a large number of them are also working towards demand creation. And then on top of that, we've got the new PLI scheme, which is in place, and the PNP, which is going to help the conversion to electric. Railroad electrification and uptake of electric vehicles requires 2- and 3-wheelers will be needed in a pathway to decarbonize the transport sector. We can look at policies like what they have in China and California in particular, which could serve as role models here. Both regions have proven that the right policy mix is essential in supporting a rapid uptake of electric vehicles while simultaneously spurring the development of nascent industry that can bring with it the importance of industrial growth. Heavy-duty vehicles will remain more challenging for now for electrification. However, what we foresee is that in the next couple of years, the charging infrastructure which is being planned on the highways, plus hydrogen fuel cell for the large vehicles, will probably come in the near future. Public transport and railways relieve the pressure on the roads. A modal shift is needed. Urban planning promotes sustainable transport. Policies can reduce emissions from transport sector through multiple channels. One is reducing the emissions intensity per passenger kilometer traveled by encouraging a shift from private vehicles to public transport, biking, walking when we have a close neighborhood, and carpooling, which is also a very important factor. Reducing the emissions per vehicle kilometer travel through measures that encourage shift from fossil fuels to electric vehicles. So for electric vehicles, when we look at EVs, we've got to divide them into different baskets: 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, cars, and public transport and commercial vehicles. All will take off at a different stage in their whole life cycle. The infrastructural requirements are very different for each of these sectors. To start with, the 2-wheelers are probably going to be the low-hanging fruit, which is going to begin to convert towards electric. These are the vehicles where 80% of the vehicles on the road are 2-wheelers, and we are already seeing a lot of parity which has already come in because of the subsidies and support from the government. So the initial purchase price, there's parity there. In fact, not parity. These vehicles have become cheaper than IC engine vehicles. And in the course of TCO, the total cost of ownership, when you look at it over a 3 or a 5 or a 7-year period, these vehicles were already much cheaper than IC engine vehicles. Now, because of petrol being at the price that it is, the gap has increased exponentially. The process of building the roadmap in India and decarbonizing transport in India involves 8 components. The first one being urban transformation for healthier, inclusive lifestyle and efficient, resilient, prosperous cities. The next is low carbon energy supply strategy. So we need long-term policies here. I was talking about the various pushes from the government, but at this point of time, there is no concrete policy to say by which time the whole industry should convert to electric. There are numerous projections out there, 80% by 2030 or 50% by 2030 for the larger vehicles. We believe that the numbers are going to be much larger than that, and the conversion is going to happen much faster than that for various reasons. One, of course, it is the price factor, which is a very, very critical one. The TCO, like I said, is already lower. And when we look at the convenience and ease of use, that's another very, very important factor. The next factor is improve intermodal and mode-wise system efficiencies. And then the next one is optimize supply chains to manage freight transport emissions. That's a very large emitter. Avoid vehicle kilometers for commuting, shopping, accessing services. So where possible, use electric vehicles, use the smaller electric vehicles for the last mile commute. Provide low carbon solutions for rural populations. Accelerate action on adoption in the transportation sector. And lastly, large-scale deployment of economic instruments and leverage financing. While all these factors are very critical ones, another very important one is that of actually educating the customer, educating the public. So why not include air pollution? When we talk about Swachh Bharat programs, for example, we need to even talk about the air pollution, which is a very, very big factor. So when we talk about these programs, Swachh Bharat, we should include air pollution into it, just in the way that we did with solar and then with the LEDs, etc. And like I said, lastly, financing is a very critical factor. This is something where we need to actually start converting from IC to electric. In IC, there is a very large chunk of vehicles which are already be getting financed. In electric, that number is much, much lower so far, but I believe that's going to change very soon. And another factor, which is a very critical factor, is that of the delivery vehicles, the B2B deliveries. Now, these vehicles, if they start converting, so a mandate to start converting the delivery vehicles towards electric. Now, a lot of them are actually doing very short runs, but they're using very old vehicles to actually do those commutes. And these are normally generally BS3, BS4 vehicles, very old vehicles, which are now probably ready for scrappage, but they are still running on the roads. And these vehicles, should they be converted to electric, will also have a huge impact. So that said, demand creation is a very critical factor for electric vehicles. A large part of it is already done in terms of the subsidies, etc. Now mandating plus actually having long-term policies is going to be the next step, which is going to be a very important one.
Thanks a lot, Naveen, for an excellent presentation. And I really like this idea of Swachh Bharat equivalent for transport, maybe Swachh Yatayat or something that we need to do so that we can take this agenda forward. So once again, thanks a lot for taking your time and speaking to us.
Thank you. Pleasure being
so
here.
one issue that Naveen highlighted was this whole issue of finance. So the next speaker who we have is Mr. Yuvraj Sarda. He's the CEO and Senior Vice President, Two-Wheeler Division at Manappuram Finance Vehicle and Equipment Finance Limited. So Yuvraj, over to you.
Yeah. Hi, good evening. Thanks, Amit. Thanks for inviting me at this platform. I think mostly all the parts have been covered very well by Naveen sir, and I and Naveen sir are mostly there. Last week also we were there in some call. So the decarbonization is actually the factor which is all affecting us, and I also first of all, we in Manappuram is already funding electric vehicles, and I have already lended more than 2000 vehicles, electric vehicles, and then we are growing ahead day by day on electric because everybody feels electric is a future. So we also started 2.5 years back, and two-wheelers, three-wheelers, we are lending it, and we are present in all the areas of India. Like we are present in near about 4,000 branches, and all the brands we are doing. So what are mostly all for the decarbonization part, I think automobile companies are already doing some work. Some of the works which Munjal sir has also covered, that financing is basically the need. So finance companies are also very much interested in funding these vehicles. But the main part where we as a financiers are finding it difficult is only the product quality, and also if that is to be managed, because this is the same product which can be funded by all the NBFCs if our money is safe, which we feel that can only be promoted or can only be sold if all these financiers get a support. And one major part is on the financing of the vehicles, which comes as a question mark why this is not growing. So the issue is earlier this product is only being financed by the banks. Now mostly NBFCs also started entering it, and they also started to getting these vehicles financed. So mostly the NBFC, why the NBFCs are not ready to fund is the reason is this. They find that after the resale of the value of product is not there, that they are also finding it very difficult to do this finance. And above all, if you see the two factors which will help in financing our product is the vehicle cost, batteries, and then the vehicle. So mostly 55 to 60% is the cost of the batteries, which is the cost of other than battery. 40% is the battery cost. So mostly everything is coming from China side, and so we also feel that if Government of India can do something or can develop these products in India, that will help us in growing it. Coming the barriers, what are the barriers? Why we finance companies are not understanding or why the people are not buying it is only because of this. There are two factors. One is the high interest rate, which is the reason which I told is the only factor where IC engine is being sold at 12% or maybe 13, but these vehicles are electric vehicles are being sold at 14 to 15 or maybe 16%. So because they want 2-3% of the margins are there. Then one more factor which is hitting in them is the LTV, loan to value ratio, which we call the amount of the loan. So we as a financiers are also not funding it more, since the resale value is very less. If we repossess the e-rickshaws, if we repossess the two-wheelers, so can we as an automobile companies, I request and they can bring us a quarter. So we financiers and automobile manufacturers as well as dealers should come together, so that if we repossess that two-wheelers, if we repossess that three-wheelers, they should help us in refinancing it. So we as a financier will definitely will go into it, and that is also a reason that there are very less finance options available on it. Then one more factor which is finance companies are finding it difficult is the insurance cost is also high. That is also a reason why the insurance cost is high, because there are no safety of the product, and then however diesel, but the price of the diesel as well as insurance, there is a huge difference in insurance part. So these are one of the things which I feel that as a financiers, we have to take care of it. And we also know the future is electric, and we definitely wants to support the finance as well as OEMs. This is the same product which can be sold in the market, and I think will help us, definitely will grow. That is from my side.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Dheeraj. On this very positive note that the future is electric. So how do we realize this future sooner rather than later is the question. And we really need to kind of continue and evolve this discussion about financing at a very effective rate, so that the uptake of EV is much more rapid and rampant than internal combustion. So once again, thanks a lot for your time and speaking to us on this.
Thank you.
We have the last speaker, but definitely not the least. We have Mr. Yuvraj Sarda from Sun Mobility, and he's going to share some of his perspective on the deployment and adoption of electric mobility. Over to you, Yuvraj.
Thank you so much, Amit. And I must congratulate WRI for organizing this forum and trying to raise the awareness of this topic, which is pretty important in the given scheme of things. I would like to, given Naveen ji and my earlier speaker Dheeraj ji have covered the vehicle and the financing aspect, I will try to share a perspective from the charging infrastructure point of view. I'm representing Sun Mobility. The reason I'm here is, our company promoter and founder, Mr. Chetan Maini, is a bit unwell. He met with an accident a few days back, and he's kind of recovering from there. So I'm trying to, represent Sun Mobility on his behalf. I would like to say that charging infrastructure plays a very important role in the way we are seeing electric mobility, scaling up in India. Sun Mobility as a company has been created with a vision to enable mass adoption of electric mobility, which since 2017, all what we are looking at is trying to see how we can work towards the entire ecosystem approach to address decarbonization of land transport, especially the last mile or urban transport, which we believe are low-hanging fruit. We've heard a lot about electric mobility, but I'm talking about a time since three key challenges have been hampering the growth of electric mobility: the cost, range anxiety, and long time it takes to recharge. While the cost challenge has been very clearly addressed by the government, and they have, through generous subsidies that have come in, have addressed the high upfront cost challenge. There and of course for reasonable time duration, which gives the industry sufficient time to set up the supply chain and make this as a more sustainable business. The way we are looking at from the energy infrastructure point of view or charging infrastructure point of view is that to make electrics self-sustainable, especially for certain vehicle categories, battery swapping makes immense sense. And the fundamental concept of separating batteries from the vehicle, both physically and financially, and kind of using smaller swappable batteries that can basically allow. Let me kind of share a quick video that also gives you an understanding of what the solution means. So basically a very simple approach, very user intuitive in terms of trying to mimic what a typical user does for refueling his vehicle. He walks to a refueling point, does a swap and kind of gets back to his job, which addresses the key issues of long charging time as well as high upfront cost. And that's where Sun Mobility has been working as a company to bring battery swapping into the mainstream through specific applications such as the commercial applications like the delivery scooters, the ride-hailing scooters, or three-wheelers, auto rickshaws, e-rickshaws, and even goods delivery vehicles, which we believe need to operate without any constraint of time boundedness as well as on the range part, and that's where battery swapping kind of comes into play. The whole idea or the way we are looking to implement this solution is putting together a few pieces of technology, which includes swappable battery, quick interchange station, which allows swapping to happen, and a software system that offers user the visibility on the battery range and energy, basically energy capacity point of view, and also from our end, how does an energy operator manage the network? And with these technologies put in together, the approach towards implementing this is through a series of partnerships. We believe that every player in this value chain can bring their core strength and eventually make this whole ecosystem work, where there are vehicle manufacturers or OEMs, which are working towards building electric vehicles, and we are working with those vehicle manufacturers to see how we can integrate these batteries and enable them to come to market very quickly. We've worked with companies like Piaggio, which went from having no electric vehicle product to launching an electric vehicle product in 10 months. And that's how more and more OEMs can leverage the existing expertise of batteries from the partners and work towards getting the vehicle on the road. We've been also working with ecosystem partners such as IOCL, Indian Oil, which has the largest network of fuel pumps. We believe charging infrastructure and the existing refilling infrastructure needs to have an overlap so that users start to feel comfort about finding the nearest charging point or nearest swapping point and being able to access the same with the same convenience that they are used to currently. And that's where players like Indian Oil or Tata Power that we've partnered with come into play. And today we have a network of more than 65 swapping points across 15 cities, and we are working to make it more and more dense. And the way we've come together so far is we've kind of covered through this network and a small fleet of vehicles over 8 million kilometers. That has helped overall to reduce at least 1 million kilograms of carbon emissions over the last 2 years. And the broad thought process here is that India as a country needs diverse solutions. There are ways to find the most optimum solution for a particular use case. There is need for purpose-built vehicles, and the solutions need to be flexible enough to take care of the regional diversity that we have as a country, and at the same time the cultural diversity, the operational diversity. For example, the temperatures that are there in Delhi, Gurgaon versus the temperatures in Kerala need to be ensured that the solution is rightly spec'd to be able to address customers' concerns, at the same time get the right economics and be sustainable, whether there are subsidies or not. Eventually, like several countries like Hong Kong or China, where we've seen that the moment subsidies were removed, immediately the sales came down. And so there is a need for industry to come together and provide different types of solutions that can enable or help sustain the existing curve that we are seeing, or we can say the J curve we are seeing for electric mobility. And that's where Sun Mobility's attempt is to, at least for certain vehicle categories, for certain vehicle applications, come up with a solution that can enable to sustain that J curve of the growth of electric mobility. India as a country has huge potential, and I'm sure if OEMs, if industry participants are successful in India, globally there are several India-like markets where we have same challenges, and they have not even begun thinking about electrics yet. Forget policies. And those are the markets where India could become a great export hub and start to take these low-cost carbon mitigation technologies and help, global economies, especially the Western economies, the emerging economies of Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America, to mitigate the impact of climate change and reduce their dependence on carbon-based transport using these low-cost technologies. So I would like to just conclude by saying that eventually the industry needs to look at long-term, sustainable, cost-effective solutions that are at the same time scalable and offering the same level of convenience that users are used to. This will definitely help India to become a completely emission-free transport system and help other countries to do so. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Yuvraj, for incredible insight on charging infrastructure, and especially highlighting the need of battery swapping as one of the technologies to address the charging infrastructure.
Thank you.
So we heard from multiple stakeholders today on one, what are they doing in terms of advancing the conversation of decarbonization of transport, and second is what are the issues, challenges, and barriers which they are facing in terms of this transition from a high carbon or to a low carbon mobility system. Today's event is just a starting point of the conversation, because as part of this NDC-TIA project, what we intend to do is that one, today we have just launched the forum, we will broaden it a little more, and then what we will do is that we will organize regular interactions such as these. Interactions with a larger set of stakeholders with the common theme that how do we advance and accelerate the conversation of decarbonizing transport. These interactions will include representation from public agencies at national level, at state level, at city level, but more importantly, this will also include a very active participation from private sector. We will try to include companies which are doing their bit to decarbonize transport, and as Manas said, to move towards the agenda of carbon neutrality. How do they kind of accelerate that pathway? We will also bring in civil society, academia, research organizations, so that we can, one, learn from their research and work, but also if there's something that we can help them to advance the conversation forward. We will also try to bring some more startups, entrepreneurs in this space who can come. We will also bring in OEMs and people who are involved in manufacturing, delivery of these vehicles. But the idea being that we would try to assimilate the entire ecosystem a representation of the entire ecosystem in this forum. And the theme being simple: how do we accelerate this transition towards electric mobility? So with this, I think we would bring this conversation to close. But before I close this conversation, I would really like to thank our political partners, Niti Aayog, for facilitating this conversation today, and especially to Mr. Amitabh Kant for delivering such an incredible inaugural speech on why and how can we move forward. The stakeholder forum is supported by the NDC-TIA project as part of the NDC-TIA for Asia, and it includes 7 partners. And this discussion that we will have will try to do more online as well as in person, because we know that online has a much greater reach and people from various geographies can come and participate. So with this, let me bring this conversation to close, the launch of the workshop to close. But again, special thanks to Shri K.R. Jyotilal, Principal Secretary, Government of Kerala, Mr. Surendra Kumar Bagre, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Shri Ashish Kundra, Transport Commissioner, Delhi, Manas Floria, CEO of Nagaro, Naveen Munjal, CEO of Hero Electric, Dheeraj Agrawal, CEO and Senior Vice President, Two Wheelers, Manappuram Finance, and Yuvraj Sarda from Sun Mobility. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us. We would like to keep this conversation going. We would like to meet at a frequent interval to advance the conversation forward. And we look forward to your participation in the future event. So before we close the day, a special thanks to my colleague Nikita and Garima, who have been working tirelessly to make this event happen, and our CEO, Dr. O.P. Agrawal. On that note, on that positive note, let me bring this launch workshop to a close. And once again, thanks a lot and a very good night to everyone all.